Semantics.
No, not semantics. Me, Boomer, and Booger.
Yeah,
too many
semantics.
boos. No, it was good. It was NFL primetime. It was good. But watching them games was even better.
The second one, at least. I mean,
Well,
the first.
but it just depends on what you like. If you like the Eagles, then that game obviously was, it was fun to watch.
Unless you're Pat Costello.
Listen, we're going to get
complaining about every call.
We're going to get to the Eagles because you got to start. There's a lot to say. The Eagles been really, when they're healthy, the best team in football, wire to wire when they're healthy. But then it really points to Jalen Hurts because without him, it looked way different. And with him, they honestly look like one of the most dominant teams I've ever seen, right? That's saying a lot. We're going to get to all that, guys. But the Chiefs-Bengals last night, you didn't have to even have a rooting interest in that game for it to be compelling. I mean, it came down to the wire, the whole thing. So before we even get into everything, what was your takeaway from that game?
From the Eagles? I mean, from Chiefs?
Chiefs-Bengals.
I mean, it was a good, hard-fought game, obviously. They took it all the way down to the end of regulation. They were back and forward. Patrick Mahomes gutted out. We could just drum it up to get it to Super Bowl for 2 weeks. His ankle was such a major issue, as we could tell. And they were down a couple of receivers. I mean, you think about guys getting hurt in the course of the game, and all of a sudden they're empty. Skylar Moore's playing wide receiver, who's a guy who's a return specialist, but all of a sudden he was forced into the lineup. I think the big thing that stood out to the game to me is guys like Chris Jones showed up, and that's why you pay guys like Chris Jones. I mean, they harassed Joe Burrow for everything that went on in the game in Buffalo, protection problems that we thought they was going to have in Buffalo. They didn't have. The defense in Buffalo didn't get after him when they needed to, but that wasn't the case here in Kansas City with this defense. When they needed to show up, Jay, they showed up, whether it was Frank Clark harassing him or whether it was Chris Jones flushing him out of the pocket and getting him on the ground.
So Key is zoomed in, Max. I'm going to zoom out, expand the image a little bit on a macro perspective. Number one, whether you want to call it Burrowhead, whether you want the Cincinnati mayor to talk about maybe Patrick Mahomes should take a paternity test to see if Joe Burrow is his dad. Yeah, that really did happen. That stuff, regardless of whether it's manufactured or not, people factor that stuff into the equation when you get a win like this. And secondly, as relates to this matchup, I mean, the Chiefs aren't going anywhere, guys. They got a first, they got a second, they got a third, they got 2 fourths, they got a 6th pick. I mean, this is going to be the core of this team that's going to be around for a while. So when you think about, Max, the quarterback matchups, either you have an elite quarterback in the AFC, either you have a Josh Allen, a Lamar Jackson, a Joe Burrow, reaching for Deshaun Watson, a Trevor Lawrence, a Justin Herbert, and a Patrick Mahomes. And these guys yesterday, whether on a hobbled ankle, whether the O-line being depleted, guys being out, they carry their team. And then when I'm looking at guys like Dak, right, who they get 12 wins, but they can't carry the load of their particular teams. It's just such a difference between the way I look at the AFC and the way I look at the NFC is where it related to quarterbacks.
We can get it. It goes back to Eagles-Niners, right? Can you win with a non-Superman quarterback nowadays, right? Maybe you can, but the odds are against it. We're going to get to all that. Right now, guys, Patrick Mahomes is going to his third – he's started 5 years. Everyone's going 3 Super Bowls in the last 4 years. Or they go, he's been in the league 6 years. Stop, everyone. He has been a starting quarterback for 5 seasons. He has hosted the AFC Championship game every single season, 5 straight seasons. He missed his first Super Bowl by a pre-snap penalty against Tom Brady. Game was won. Never touched the ball again. They didn't change the rules for him. Or else he'd have gone to 4 Super Bowls in 5 years. As it is, he's going to his 3rd Super Bowl in 5 years after hosting 5 consecutive AFC Championship games. He's about to win his 2nd MVP. He already has a Super Bowl MVP. These are, through the first 5 seasons as a starter, Patrick Mahomes, it's not close. The greatest quarterback who ever lived. Not close. There is no one in his category when you add it all up. And then you include the eye test. Not close.
Yeah, I can't say he's the greatest quarterback to ever live.
No. Not yet, Key. I'm saying through 5 years. Compare the first 5 years of anyone's career.
The greatest, though, you can't compare 5 years.
I'll tell you why you can. Do it in baseball with Mike Trout.
Some people get off to it. Mike Trout hadn't won dibbity-doo.
That's right,
Stop.
but every season you go, there's an argument he's the best ever. At a certain point, you just say he's the best ever. The point is, no one's ever had the first 5 years of his career like this. Just had never happened before.
No, I understand, but not yet. We'll start to have that conversation 6-7 years from now. But as far as because some people start off slower and then they finish strong.
That's right.
I'm not saying
he will be the greatest.
He finished strong, but I can't use that. But he certainly played hero ball last night, no question about it.
But Max, real quick, towards your point, though, legacy defining like moments, and I hate when we use the word legacy, but like being on a hobbled ankle and him getting that first down, right, and it obviously passing the penalty that came down on the last play of the game, which got them in field goal range, like things like that. When you hear guys talk about how he gritted it out and couldn't make plays with his feet, but he did in that moment.
All the stuff that, like Joe Burrow gets a lot of credit for that toughness and moxie. Mahomes got all that, and Mahomes has supernatural ability, it seems. All right, here is Patrick Mahomes himself at the post-game presser talking about all the AFC Championship appearances and what lies ahead.
It's hard for me to comment on it. My goal is to win the Super Bowl. Obviously, the AFC Championship is something that I'll forever remember, winning that Lamar Hunt trophy at Arrowhead Stadium. To me, the job's not finished. All you can think about is how are you going to get better? This is a great football team that we're going up against. I think you've seen that the last few weeks and this whole entire season. So I know I should take the best that we got, and that's going to take us preparing this next week and the next week after that to go out there and play our best football.
And I think they will. They got to get healthy. You look at Juju, he had to leave the game due to medical issues. He has to get healthy. But the thing is I want to see Tony has to get healthy again. If he's healthy, I think that they're going to do some special stuff with him in the Super Bowl. But the one thing that has to happen defensively is they've got to figure out how to stop that Philadelphia Eagles vaunted as we move forward to the Super Bowl, that running game. Just the style of runs. If you look at late in the game in Philadelphia, you probably were sitting there saying to yourself, why are they running Jalen Hurts? Two things. To give whoever their opponent was going to be something to think about. And on top of that, to Philadelphia to close the game out. To show you that they have the ability to get into a certain situation late in the third quarter to close the game out by running Jalen Hurts. I feel like five or six times late in the game there.
There's not to mention Hassan Reddick, right? Like the Eagles got a that's what I mean, guys, about we're going to get to the Eagles and the Niners. There's just a lot to get into. Meantime, Joe Burrow, it's so funny how things can swing on one play, right? Like imagine if there's no late penalty in that game and they can't kick the field goal and they lose in overtime. Or Joe Burrow gets a call here or a call there that the officials missed and he wins. Now the whole thing is, oh my God, Patrick Mahomes can't get by Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's going to another Super Bowl. But as it is, he's stopped here in the AFC Championship game. And guys, there's no guarantee you get back in the next couple of years. He might win the Super Bowl next year. Or the odds are you don't even get back to the AFC Championship game. There are a lot of good teams in the AFC who could you could lose on any given Sunday. So by a field goal, right? By the slimmest of margins on a couple of refs calls, entire legacies and the way we think about guys change on a dime.
But Max, what we're not going to do is we're not going to sit up here and act as though the refs cost the Cincinnati Bengals the football game.
I agree.
I mean, you cannot push a guy out of bounds and into the fire pit, almost into the fire pit. And then, of course, Patrick Mahomes is going to put a little yeast on it and flop a little bit, but he should.
Right.
He was pushed out of bounds,
I agree with Key.
And he shouldn't have been pushed out of bounds. You can point to many things in the game. If would this happen? Oh, my God, if that wouldn't happen. If the refs wouldn't have, when Cook hit Hurst down the middle of the field and it was picked off, well, what if the referee would turn his head and look the other way and never saw it?
That's right.
Well,
there were holding calls missed. There were
that happened.
Jay, I'm with Key on that.
Yeah, look, I mean, you could make a case that Joe Burrow, a couple plays before Patrick Mahomes ran out of bounds and got the flag, that it was roughing the passer. But I see that. I'm like, okay, it's fine. It's when you play in Kansas City, it's like LeBron James. You play in Boston. Sorry, you're not going to get the call.
They're going to miss some calls too.
Well,
it's happened.
The one in Boston was really bad for LeBron. But
roughing the passer is real kind of like touch and go this year.
Yeah.
So sometimes a guy just grabs a guy and throws him on the ground, and you're like, well, wait a minute, how is that roughing the passer? Then when it's egregious, the referee doesn't call. I mean, it's just one of those balancing acts this year on roughing the passer.
And when it has an effect on the outcome of the game. But, Jay, the reason I brought it up originally is just that it's not to say, oh, the refs blew it for the Bengals. It's that these little moments in these tight games and the way we think about guys' whole careers change, that's what makes this stuff so compelling this time of year. These are the legacy-defining moments.
Agreed. I was going to say to Key, it is whack, though, for me, and I get it, though. But when you see everybody coming into the locker room after the game and one of the guys from Cincinnati's yelling at the guy, like, don't hit the quarterback, you're like, come on, man.
Yeah.
I know Michael Parsons tweeted about it.
I really don't know what that was about, but
that's lame, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't think I would have had the energy in that situation